My name is Ahsan Najmi, and I'm the CEO and Principal Architect of Najmi Bilgrami Collaborative Private Limited. Your question was that what inspired me to be an architect. I'm proud to be a second generation architect. My late father, Misbah Najmi, was an architect. My sister, Sara Najmi Bilgrami, is an architect. The chairman of our firm, Mr. Akil Bilgrami, is an architect. So my partner and brother-in-law, Zaid Bilgrami, is also an architect. So I think we have a family disease. We are all architects, and it started very early on. I had an inclination towards art, and it is something that we always saw. My late father in the evenings would lie down watching TV with a sketchbook and sketch. And you know, when you were a child, you see things and you start emulating. And I began to sketch a lot. And over the years, I would end up at his office, and I'd see, those were the times where there was a lot of manual drafting and models were made by hand. And I'd see those models and I got very inspired. And I remember I'd sit and I'd try to build my own models. And it just became a part of who I wanted to be. I was not pressured at all by my father. That's something that I really enjoyed. And lo and behold, after A-levels, I applied to a series of art school. I was fortunate enough to go to Rhode Island School of Design, and I did my Bachelor's of Art as well as my Bachelor's of Architecture from there. After which I practiced in America for a short period of time and came back to Pakistan and joined at that time my father's firm, Misbah Najmi and Associates. So for me, the choices of going abroad was also very different. The choice of school was also very different. If you see what Rhode Island School does, you know, you spend your foundation year exploring all mediums of art. You don't study architecture from the first year. You study drawing, design, painting, glass blowing, photography, and you develop a skill set across the board. So for me, that foundation was very important. I didn't end up in a technical school. I ended up in an art school. And then from sophomore year, which is your second year, that is when you begin your architectural design. So I think it was a very clear decision that I wanted to pursue something that would allow me to expand my horizons in the realm of art. So for me, early on, it was a very clear decision. I wanted to pursue an architectural education that would allow me to think multifaceted. It would allow me to approach architecture through a sensibility of design and exploration rather than something that was geared more towards a predominantly technical base. Because I felt and I was guided and I was fortunate that I had the mentorship of my late father to be able to give me and my sister that same insight, that choose wisely, choose your direction, understand your own ability and if there is room for you to, and you're not sure, then go to a place that will allow you to explore enough that you can find yourself. And that's why I chose Rhode Island School of Design. The fulfillment of seeing something being built. Cities, countries are built and recognized by their iconic architecture. They become symbols of nationality, they become symbols of eras, they become symbols of how design exploration has gone on. So there's nothing like being part of that journey and being able to create something that you know will last and transcend a very long period of time. And hopefully you've put in enough thought into that with an understanding and a maturity to know that when your pen touches your paper, and when that translates into whatever manifestation on three-dimensional modeling, exploration, those are things that have permanency in them. And so the quick answer to your question is that excitement of being able to see it come into its reality, that satisfaction you cannot compete with. It is the reason why you sign up to be an architect. It is the reason why you go through hours and hours of that journey of thinking and exploring. And I think that that's what I love most, the satisfaction of seeing what you've designed and built and stand there and take it in for a minute. It's amazing, whether it's an interior, whether it's an architecture, whether it's a master plan. We were designing a university, and I remember the amount of time that we spent with the horticulturist, understanding that, at the time of autumn or at the time of fall, what the color of that entire university would turn into. Because all of us have to remember, we have these wonderful memories of our childhood, of our education, of our colleges, where we would sit under a tree and with a cup of coffee, and we'd remember these spaces. And we go back to our universities or our memory bank, and we remember that time. It's because somebody curated that space. And so you have the opportunity to curate that space. And so it's nothing more satisfying than being able to curate a space and then have somebody be a part of that and enjoy that. That's the beauty of architecture. The meaning of architecture, that is an interesting question. Architecture in its bare essence means that I'm creating space. I'm creating volume. I'm creating something that is interacting on a city level, on a urban level. I am creating a journey for somebody to navigate through. I am creating a space where emotions will be invoked in the person that's inhabiting, he, she, they, how they inhabit that space. So for me, I don't think there's one simple answer for it. I think what it is it's a multitude of many different things put together, and it's your canvas. You have the opportunity to paint it. You have the opportunity to build something on a flat piece of land. And you have to be very conscious that people are going to be that beautiful journey that you're curating. Those moments that you're creating are all part of the architecture that you're putting forward. This is a conversation that's, I think, very important to be had. And why is this important to be had? Because when I talk about my particular style, I think I hold very proudly that it's not one distinct individualistic style. Every project has to be approached by the nuances of whatever site conditions, whatever city, whatever external influences, and most importantly, its program. So what I feel is that we have to learn how to focus on the process of architecture and the process of resolving something. For me, there have been local influences. My late father is definitely one of them. Mr. Akil Bilgrami is definitely one of those influences. I was very fortunate to be mentored by them. And I cannot take away that my fundamentals of my thought process were definitely ingrained by them. But whilst I enjoy the work of all the other local architects, one of the things that I like most when I look outward on a global platform is I love seeing how architects push the envelope. They redefine the thought process. They go against the status quo and they try to create something that's pushing a little bit of the envelope every time. And that's when you see the Fosters, the Zahas, the Garys of the world today. That's where you see the Burke Ingalls of today, and you see how their influences their stories are worth listening to, their explorations are worth looking at. And the takeaway from that, at least for us, is that you have to map your own journey, and when you look outward, it should be for inspiration of their journey, not an imitation of their journey. Everybody's journey is different, and your project's journey is different. So we have to be very careful in that line between inspiration and imitation. And so learn from people's journey, look at their work, and look at and aspire to put something that beautiful out there, but understand how they got there, and then take from that. So I look at a lot of people's work, and I of course follow their processes, and I take inspiration from their processes to understand how to solve problems that I might have on my table. When I talk about my design philosophy and the philosophy of our firm, and I reflect my partner's judgments in this, there is one inherent factor that is always put into account. And that factor is that you have to design for a certain amount of permanence. You have to understand that what you are putting out there is not a temporary fad. It is not something that is a set that is going to be pulled down in a couple of days. So every gesture that you put forward has to stand the test of time. And that's why it's very important to work on every decision that you make has to have a level of permanence to it. There has to be excellence of design. You have to strive for excellence of design. And excellence of design does not mean over design. So for us, when we start work, we understand the context, we look into the process, we focus on the process, we build a philosophy and a narrative of each particular project is individual. We build that philosophy, first we work on building that philosophy, and once we built that philosophy, we contextualize it to that very site and then let it grow out of it. And when it grows out of it, then we focus on making gestures that are permanent. We understand it in its totality. You never look at it from just one plane, you look at it from its overall. And then you stick to that philosophy till the very end. because that very gesture or philosophy that made you make the architecture of it will also help you resolve the interior of it. So we are very cognizant of the fact that there has to be a deep thought process in philosophy and permanence. I can tell you that we take pride in being a multifaceted firm, and we work extensively in both areas of corporate institutional architecture as well as corporate and institutional interiors. We have a residential portfolio, but I think I can't say which one's my most favorite, but I can definitely say that I would prefer to do a corporate architecture or a corporate interior over a residential project.
Why?
I don't think you can take the same mindset into a residential project. I think a residential project is like a tailor-made suit. You have to understand the person. You have to spend time with them. You have to make sure that it fits right. And for that, you need to invest time. And for that, you have to, these cookie cutter homes are not something that we work on. We'd much rather, if we take on a residential project, it's a journey with the people. You have to sit with them. You have to understand how they eat, how they live their lives, how they buy their groceries. And so if I do residential, it's few and far between, but it's definitely one where we invest time in understanding the people and we design for them. I'm not saying that corporate architecture or interior isn't the same, but when you're doing something institutionally, you are working with a committee or a group of people. So when you're working with a corporate client, you're working with a group of people and you're working with a fixed narrative that's a position of the institution. So it is easier, the processes are much easier, and which is why our inclination is towards that work. I think this is one of the most age-old architectural questions. Which follows which? And I think you have framed the question differently, which is why I think that is the key. It is not one that outweighs the other. So simply put, some people would start with a functional plan and then let the form follow. Others would come up with a form and then fit the plan in it. I think it's about going back and forth. I think it's about understanding your client's requirements, the needs. I think it's about understanding the urban context, the microclimate, and then working back and forth. So you bring some resolution to the plan, you start attacking the form, then you bring some resolution to that, you marry the two, you go back until you find that harmony. And you have to find that harmony that works for you. And then you have to identify places where what takes precedent over the other without losing sight of the philosophy. This is why I keep coming back to this. If your philosophy and your thought process in where you started, whether your inspiration is a twig, or if it is a leaf, or it is a lantern, whatever your inspiration is, or whether it is a story that is driven from the client's corporate outlook or what they're doing as a company, and you are pulling something from them, whether it is a manufacturing concern and you find what they're manufacturing and some part of the product that they're manufacturing that stays as your thought process. Now those things, those are where you pick up, you work on them, you think through them, and you understand that, okay, If it is a textile industry and you're doing a project for them and you understand and you start becoming obsessed with the waft and the weft and you build a philosophy about it, now you know that here's where my thought process is coming. So now every decision is coming from here. And you're sitting there and you're working a little bit on the form and the plan, then you come back, and that's how you find that balance. You find something to hold on to, that becomes your anchor, and that's where you come back and forth. I hate the fact that we talk about trends, because I don't think that when you do an interior design or you do an architecture design, it should be about a trend. It's a really good conversation to say that, this is trending today, let's try that. I think what we're talking about is thought process. If an open office plan is trending today, why is it trending today? What is it giving to the office? What is it giving to the work environment? What is it giving to the user? And then tomorrow, when that open office plan starts becoming phone booths and they start becoming a counter narrative because COVID has just come in and you have to rethink all of that, that means that is a constantly evolving trend. What you need to understand is why did that trend or what was necessary about that, and why does it come and become part of my project. If it is an architectural gesture and everybody's putting ACP on their buildings, does that mean that we should be putting ACP on their building? No, hopefully you should be the first one to have thought of that trend, and hopefully you're the one who's bringing that trend by using your expertise as a creative to constantly push the barrier. So I'd like to say, let's create those trends and let's make them meaningful. What makes a good architect? A lot of hard work. A lot of hard work. I'll come back to an old story. And this is where my belief as a good architect comes in from. I had my first design critique in college. And I called my late father and I said, I was panicking and I was stressed, and I said, big critique, I've never done this. What should I do? What should I expect? And my sister was also in the same college, and she was a couple of years ahead of me. And so I had a lot of people to lean on. But this piece of advice for me, I think, transcends them all. And I said, what do I do? And my father's words were, first you convince yourself, and if you are convinced, you can convince everybody else. And so I think those words are my ethos. If you convince yourself that you have worked hard enough to be able to solve the problem that was given to you in an architectural solution, then you will be able to convince everybody else, and you will be a great architect. I believe that success is in the hands of the Almighty. We are people who work very hard towards breaking barriers. So success as NBCL is that I'm blessed to have wonderful partners to work with. I think the strength of our partnership allowed us to bank on each other, to be able to critique each other, to be able to look at things in a way where possibly one wasn't looking at. And so I definitely attribute the success of NBCL to the balance and the foresight that the founders brought to this firm, and the grit and the hard work and the passion that the second generation brought to this firm? I think architects, this is one of our most important roles of today. I think if we are not having a conversation about sustainability and we're not having a conversation about what green architecture means, then we shouldn't be practicing architecture. Because you cannot be living in a world today and not understand that you have deep challenges around you. You have challenges on energy, you have challenges on waste, on challenges on food security, you have challenges across the board. And what is our job as architects and creators? We have to accept those challenges, we have to understand those challenges, and we have to react to those challenges. And we have to do them in our context. One of the most important things that I take away from our learnings across the board is one size doesn't fit all. Just because a conversation is being had in another country, it is a great conversation that we have to listen to and learn from, and then we have to bring it into our context and understand our challenges, and we have to react to those changes. We have to understand that we are blessed with so many wonderful things in this country. Can an indigenous problem be a problem to all our solutions? No, it can't be. Can we bring solutions that were studied upon and bring them and merge them and find a new narrative? 100% that's the way forward. So it is the most important conversation. We need to understand that LEED is not just a buzzword. Green is not just plantation in a building. We need to understand what are we trying to do. We are trying to reduce the energy footprint of our building. We are understanding the burden that we are putting on a city's infrastructure and how to resolve that. We are understanding that we are building a work or a inhabitable space for human beings, and we need to understand the importance of acoustic values, the importance of heat gain that's coming in, the cooling load, the fresh air that we're putting in, the fact that we're putting a carpet, is it reused, the fact that we're bringing in floorings, can we look at localized solutions and reinvent them to be part of that solution? Can we look at things, can we train our contractors, can we train our people to be able to put those things in play? Can we educate ourselves on the need and the solutions of this? This is the most pertinent conversation today. This is the only conversation that we should all be having. It's a very interesting question. Architect has to be responsible for a lot of different facets of society, right? By and large, you can't narrow it in and say what you can and cannot do, but we have certain responsibilities. When we see a problem that is infrastructure or culture or architectural based, as part of society, we definitely need to address that. We need to be contributors on many different areas, whether we are doing so with our skill set or we are doing so in kind. So depends how or which area of facet of society you're looking at, but I think architects have generally been contributors across the board. Yes, we are very fortunate that we're doing a number of high-rise, mid-rise, high-rise developments across Pakistan in cities like in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. Our journeys are very different on each project. When you are looking at things from an urban context, you are looking and you have an opportunity to build a vertical structure. It's very important to understand what happens in the particular setting of that city. So for example, we are doing a regional office building for a well-respected Pakistani bank in the capital city of Islamabad. Now, one of the beautiful things about the capital city of Islamabad is, and if you are on a main artery, whether you are or you aren't, you are surrounded by this beautiful green terrain. And in itself, the green terrain is vertical and it's layered. So if you look from a human scale, you are naturally, and if you take your creative hat on, you are seeing these lovely silhouettes. Started thinking about the fact that, oh wow, so you look from afar and you see this silhouette, and then you go closer and you begin a journey to trek the vertical mountain. And you go through these patches which are easier, and then you go through these patches which are harder, and yet you navigate yourself to the top, and then you have this beautiful open scape. So one thing became evident. You don't want to build something that is alien in that environment. So whilst we looked at the form and the limitations of the FAR and the setbacks, etc., we built something that had vertically, as a volume went up, and then we emulated, or we tried to emulate, a sliver that came down that became that line, you know. I remember all of us in art school would be doing all kinds of drawings, and one of the most difficult one was to take your pencil and just make that one gesture that would emulate whatever form that you were sketching. Now imagine trying to do that with a building, and you take that one gesture, and that became your powerful gesture. And that's how the inspiration for that building came. And the negative space became this wonderful scoop that would encompass you, and it became emulated the same journey that when you actually come to a mountain and now you're here looking up, all of a sudden it's coming on you. From far you see this as a silhouette, and you come closer and it comes upon you. And that became the inspiration for this building. And of course we knew that the selection of the curtain wall had to be something that would be reflective of the environment that it is in. And so, you know, the choice of glass, the choice of curtain wall, the choice of detailing on the curtain wall, that was very important. Even while designing the building lighting, you know, there's a focus on the gesture. So those are a couple of the journeys that we go upon. So a couple of pieces of advice. You enter this profession based on your passion. If you are passionate about creating something, and you are passionate about design, and you know that inside the only thing you want to do is achieve that excellence in design, then enter this profession. Because if you're entering in it for other reasons, then success won't follow you. Achieving excellence in design should be paramount in the thought process. And when somebody has that thought process, they're going to constantly work in it. They're going to constantly improve on themselves. And that's the kind of dedication that you need when you're doing a single project, or you're doing, it's not about just finishing that work, submitting the drawing, off you go. It's about understanding, it's about getting into the nuts and bolts. It is understanding that how the light needs to come on it, how the texture should feel, how you can work differently, how you can explore. So it's very important to have the dedication and passion, because you're going to keep pushing. And you're constantly learning. So certain cases you have to humble yourself, you have to learn, and you have to go back again and keep at it. Disappointment is something that you have to overcome by getting a better solution. And those are the things that you need to focus on. If somebody wants to start their own practice, my advice to them, and this is something that I think is very, very important. first understand, work in a practice, put years into this practice, and understand that you are building something that you have to be responsible of. I remember a past question you asked, what about our role in society? We have to be conscious of life safety. We have to be understanding that every one of our materials that we are choosing, every kind of gesture that we're making, every specification that we're putting in there, we have to be cognizant of the fact that handicapped people, differently abled people are going to be coming into these spaces. That we are dressing and working across the board. In order to learn all of this, you need to be a part of a practice. You need to understand systems. And then you can go out on your own and venture into something. And get enough experience under your belt that you know the difference between permanence and trend. And maybe you get the opportunity to grow within that firm and you don't, or if you choose to go on your own, make sure that professionalism is your number one thought. You are a professional and you have to act like a professional. You have to think like a professional. You have to react like a professional. I think we are very blessed that way. The three of us, Sara, Zaid, and myself, we have always sought eye to eye on design. And I think that has been our strength and that has been our success. We were fortunate enough that when we merged the two entities, Misbah Najmi and Associates and Bilgrami and Farooq, it was on the basis that the three of us had such a similar outlook in where we wanted to go, in the kind of design language that we have, that we have been an asset to each other. Over the years, we have learned on the other sides of the business whose skill set works best. And we have allowed either one of the partners to run in that area. So I think it would be incorrect to say that one person is the person who's driving. I think it would be fair to say that we are blessed with having strength of all these partners and their expertise in different arenas.
Hello, I'm Mohammed Al-Saba. I'm the Technical Director of Goodman Middle East, and I'm here today to tell you a little bit about our company. Goodman Middle East is a company that works in the development and marketing of innovative and sustainable aluminum solutions for windows, doors, and facades. We mainly work and design and sell building systems, building envelopes, and skins. We focus on improving our quality, having a good service, the best product, and not losing sight on the cost and how to optimize the best solution for the customer. Besides a wide range of standard solutions, we also develop solutions for all market sectors, from residential to commercial and industrial projects. Our high-quality systems all meet the stringent demands in terms of comfort, security, architectural design, and energy efficiency. Goodman Middle East is not only a supplier, but also a valuable partner for architects, fabricators, developers, investors, and finally, end users. A vision of the future has been built into Goodman Middle East facade. The option of dynamic shapes and interesting perspective, as well as quality of material and indispensable elements of modern architecture. Goodman Middle East can easily adjust to your perception. Thank you.